These are not. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I think everybody here knows me, so just in case you don't, I'm Karen Ross. I'm the Director of Graduate Programs and Conflict Resolution here at UMass Boston. Really, really excited for tonight's colloquium, which is the first of our spring semester. We have 4 wonderful alumni from different time periods with us, all doing different things, and super excited to talk with them and then with you as well about sort of their experience here and what they've been doing since. So before, I'm going to introduce everyone very briefly. Before I do, just a couple of announcements. For all current students, if you need colloquium credit, please do not forget to sign in. The QR code is on the edge of the table next to past the pizzas and the cookies. Also, if you are a current student, please remember that the add drop period ends tomorrow. So if you are considering making any changes to your coursework for the semester, you have about 24 more hours to do it. Make decisions soon. Last announcement regarding sort of curricular stuff. Kelly asked me to let you all know that for those of you who might be interested and eligible, information about the MATS Fellowship will be coming out in the next few weeks. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, the MATS Fellowship, named after the founder of the conflict resolution, previously known as dispute resolution programs, David Matz, is an opportunity that we have to provide funding to students for experiential learning opportunities, internships, short-term institutes, learning opportunities, often in the summer. So there is an application form that will go out for that. Finally, before I introduce our panelists, just a huge thank you, as always, to Jason and Kelly for setting everything up for tonight, dealing with changes in venue issues resulting from 2 days of closed campus, and so forth and so on. So thank you to them for everything, but especially for getting things set tonight. And I noticed that it looks like there's still a lot of pizza. So if you're hungry during the next hour and a half, please feel free to help yourselves. All right. So tonight we have with us, as I said, 4 alumni of our program. And I'll let them sort of speak about themselves and introduce themselves a bit more later on. I'll just introduce them by name for now. So sitting all the way furthest from me, Mark Camaro, Andrea Benduzik, Beza Burchik-Klein, and Stephen Frankel. We'll do this as sort of like a moderated panel. So I will ask everyone to respond to a couple of prompts, and then after that, open it up for additional questions and conversation with everyone in the room. And I'm going to sit because I don't know why I'm standing when everyone else is sitting down. But I will start with, and whatever order you want to go in. So I'd like to start by just asking you all about what brought you to the conflict resolution program? Or maybe another way of putting that is to ask, what sort of motivated you to come to a master's program, graduate program in conflict resolution? What were you interested in at that time? I don't know if the microphones are all on, so just, I don't know, Stephen, is anyone next to the mic?
Sure. I was a middle child. That's where I started. Right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The struggle is real. First of all, let me just say thanks for having me. I graduated in the program 2005, so 21 years ago, and I opened this building about 22 years ago. I was part of the staff monitoring the campus center. So I was a mediator. I was a middle child. I was skiing full time and came across somebody who told me that she was going to study to be a mediator, and I didn't know that existed. So when I started looking to go back to graduate programs, I looked into conflict resolution programs. UMass was one of a handful that was running at the time, and both the program, my family's from the East Coast, and the opportunity for a research position, a graduate assistantship, which was helping to pay for tuition, all got me here.
Oh, work. Yeah. I'm also a middle child. I'll start with that. My name is Beza Wurchak Klein. Well, I guess a little bit about my background. I am originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and and moved to United States, I think, yeah, in 2016. It's been 10 full years this March and 2 Trump presidencies, so it's going great. And I used to work as a journalist back home, and reported on a lot of stories around displacement, around the Syrian refugee crisis. So I think my interest in kind of around displacement and forced migration was born around then. And I wanted to not only report about it, but also do something about it. And I think I was looking for a graduate program that is more practical and have touches life. I think some other programs felt a little bit more theoretical, but conflict resolution felt very much in life. And after I moved to US, I landed in Boston, and UMass program was the program that I found and really liked, and that's how kind of I found myself here.
Is it okay if I don't hold it? Okay, I just don't want to, because I don't know what to do with my hands. So my name is Andrea Van Duzik. I too am a middle child. I think it's just, you're born to need to do this work. So I came to UMass Boston by way of, I was already in a grad program here for a graduate certificate in public policy and politics. And I loved that program. And I had talked to a professor about wanting to continue my graduate work, but I didn't really want to stay heavily into public policy. I really wanted to understand how to help people have conversations around policy and the application of it, because it's a dense, policy is dense, but the process in getting people to have conversations and understand what people need and what communities need was more of a an interest to me. So I took a class, I took negotiation with Professor Q as a non-matriculated student, because I didn't know if I wanted to go to the program, and I absolutely fell in love with that class. Negotiation was one of my favorite classes, and I spent time with Darren in deciding to apply. And then halfway through, I had a nervous breakdown and thought I was supposed to go to law school and didn't, and cried in Professor Matz's office for an hour. And when he actually asked me what I wanted to do in life and how I wanted to work with people and support people, it was reinforced that this program is exactly what I wanted to do. And that law school wouldn't get me to where I wanted to go. So I graduated in 2015. That's when I finished the program. And UMass Boston is just a very home place for me, and I would do anything to come back and help out the program. So I'm very honored to be here and talk with everybody. So. No pressure.
No. I too am a middle child. That's a true statement. So my name is Mark. So I was in the military for 20 years, 94 to 2014, and I was in a lot of conflict. So when I retired, I was 2 classes shy of my bachelor's degree. So I signed it up at Middlesex, took 2 accelerated classes, got my bachelor's degree, and I said, well, I got to keep going because the military is going to pay for a master's program, and I want, and I was just looking around. So UMass Boston popped up, conflict resolution. Really didn't know what it was about. I wrote my essay. I think Evan was received it and welcomed me into the program. And actually, one of the best things that ever happened to me is being able to come here, in person. I graduated in 2020 from the program, so right through COVID, beginning of COVID. But honestly, a blessing to be able to come here to attend class 3 nights a week on a Saturday, internship, just everything laid out for you. The professors were amazing. So, yep. And I'm very fortunate to be able to take, the conflict resolution, my master's, and actually do the work currently, take it and run with it. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. So thank you.
That's exactly where I wanted to say. I'm also technically middle class.
Yeah. I love it.
Sure.
Yeah, really though. Anyone else? Nobody else? Oh, okay.
Couple.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bring him a seat.
Yeah.
Okay, so you all came here with sort of slightly different, sort of different entry points, slightly different interests, went through more or less the same program. And now we're all doing very different things. So the next question is, what is your trajectory been since leaving a conflict resolution program? You don't necessarily have to talk about every piece of it if you don't necessarily, you don't want to, but for what do you do now and how did you get to this point from who's graduated or what something that?
Oh, wait, I'll start. We'll mix it up. We'll mix it up. All right.
Can I just say thank you for your service?
Oh, thank you.
Mark,
Oh,
please.
God.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Okay, so great question. So when I graduated the program, I was like, I want to do something in this field. And when I was going through, we were doing our internship at the Dorchester Courthouse for small claims mediation, and I loved it. You know, I was nervous every time we sat in the courtroom. I was like, please don't pick me. Please don't pick me. And they're like, hey, Mark, you're going to go in there. I was like, all right. I was like, co-mediator, anyone want to join me? So when we're in there and you're with real people with real problems, and you're a student and you're like, geez, am I going to solve this problem? And so I actually liked it and I enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, I want to continue this. And how can I do it? So I was like, well, and then we had another professor who was a divorce mediator. And I was like, man, maybe divorce mediation could be the route that I could go. So graduated and I said, I'm going to open up a divorce mediation company, and then it kind of went into divorce, family mediation, probate. So, I launched in 2019 and then of course, COVID hit, right? So everything kind of shut down. So I will say though, before I go on, my wife is here in the back. I know she's loving that. So her and I own the business together and we co-mediate all of our cases together. Yep. So, yep. So thanks, Joey. It is cool. And then, so we launched, and then I will tell you, how I got to where we are now is, during COVID, I would call the probate courts and speak to somebody and say, hey, I'm going through a divorce. Can you walk me through all the paperwork? And they would take the time with me. I did take a certification at MWI. So I took all the steps to be there, and I had this big binder with all the paperwork and, how to do it. But I would just talk to someone new every day and say, this form here, how do I fill this out? And does it really have to be on yellow paper? And does it have to be on pink paper? And there was all these certain things you had to do. So that's how it happened. That's how it evolved. And I will tell you, I was working with somebody who was going to go through a divorce. And I said, I'll mediate it for free. I've never done one before. And he was like, all right, what the hell? And him and his wife, we did it. I didn't even have an office. They came to my house. No, I do not suggest that. They came to my house. We did one session there, and then I went to my parents. I'm like, hey, you got an in-law apartment with no one in it. I need to use it. And that became my office for a little bit. But we did it for free. They got divorced, and I'm like, okay, we can do it. And then and here we are today.
I know, seriously. So I didn't get directly involved in mediation until a little bit after I had graduated. So I work at a nonprofit in Hanover, a human service agency. And at the time I went through grad school, I was working at that same nonprofit and I was on call all the time. So a lot of times I'd have to leave class and answer my phone. But the skills that I learned in grad school, a lot of people say, well, what can you do with that? Well, what can you do with that? It's so specific. Mediation is so specific. So I would always say to people, conflict resolution is what everybody needs in every role that they're in. So at the time I was a manager and then I became a director. So I oversaw 15 programs and the staff I was responsible for was about 250. And the employee conflict in and of itself was a piece that was a part of my day. But then I also had to negotiate state contracts. So I firmly believe that I would not have had the confidence to have those types of conversations or even sit in the room with people without the skills that I learned. Theory was really dense, very dense, and research methods was very dense. But the skills that you learn when you're doing those things are applicable in everything that you do, whether you end up in a school setting, which I did for 5 years. I did mediation at Somerville Public Schools, trained kids in mediation, which was so fun because kids are so honest. That is a direct reflection of the world, is how kids are. And teaching them conflict resolution skills was amazing because then they were able to mediate their own cases within each other. And you could see it actually in the playground. But so I did the human service setting, and then I was in a school setting, and now I'm back in administrative role back at the new nonprofit. And a lot of people say like, well, that's not what you went to school for. So then I have to continuously have the conversation of what conflict resolution is, what it looks like, and how it's applicable no matter what you do. Because people are always going to be people. There's always going to be conflict. My family is conflict ridden, and I really think that the trauma I experienced as a child, living in conflict all the time, made me feel comfortable in having those conversations and sitting with people in very intense conflict. I've been in conflicts. I've been in a mediator role where we've had a conflict, really violent fights in school. I've had it where people have said unthinkable things to each other as children and not understand where it came from. So you work with people in any realm, anytime you're working with anybody, a human being, anyone, conflict resolution is very, very relevant. And mediation skills are invaluable, especially in the relationships I have in my life, because a lot of people will be like, don't do that. Don't reframe that. Don't say it like that. I don't need you to understand me right now. I need you to so no matter what you do, it's very applicable. So, I don't know if that answers the question.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to think what happened after I graduated. I did my master's project on understanding post-resettlement needs of refugee women because I wanted to specifically work in the resettlement work and refugee immigrant rights fields. So I think that really helped me to like build a base in knowledge in the field and like some of the theories and some of the programs and ideas. And then I worked in different immigrant related organizations, including like advocacy organizations, working state policies around immigration. I worked in workforce development programs where a lot of like refugee and immigrant employment services or high skilled immigrants finding career paths in the US. And I actually got to work in a refugee resettlement program that I researched and written about in my research project, which is a community sponsorship model for refugee resettlement. Sadly, it didn't last long after the inauguration, but it was great for a year it lasted. And then now I work for a program that does immigration policy around local government. So we have a certification program where we assess local governments' welcoming policies and programs and give them star levels. It's like Michelin star for cities and local governments, and really utilize some of the skills that I learned along the process. I think, as you said, where there's people, there's conflicts, and any place I've been to, I've been using those negotiation skills, conflict resolution skills, theories we learned. We're utilizing the policy and the standard that we built for the welcoming standard for the city. So it's all across very much coming up for me, yeah.
Now I feel like I'm not allowed to hold the mic.
I knew it.
That's what mics are for.
That's awesome.
So I it's a little bit of a winding story, but when I graduated from the program in 2005, I was determined to be a mediator. So I went to work for a community dispute settlement center, helping to run the operations. And about a year in, realized I hated mediating. I just felt like every single day I was dealing with these very angry, frustrated, toxic people in a toxic relationship. And when I woke up on the right side of the bed, I felt like I was doing good in the world. And when I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I felt like I was just surrounded with negativity. And so I started to think about what would happen if people had access to these skills. So I ended up reaching out to MWI, connected with Chuck Doran, and they had a hibernating idea of doing negotiation and conflict resolution workshops and trainings. So I became their director of negotiation programs and taught conflict resolution and collaborative negotiation skills to anyone I could. And I did that for about 4 years. And one of my favorite contractors that I would facilitate with and do work with ended up leaving and getting recruited to run leadership development at what was Northeast Utilities, which is now Eversource, so merged with NSTAR. And he called me up and said, I have a spot on my team. I want you to come and support leadership development at this utility. And I was like, I don't know anything about leadership development. And he said, actually, you know way more than you think. You're doing it right now. This conflict resolution, negotiation, communication is a subset of it. But I'm playing in a bigger playground and my sandbox is more fun. Those are literally the words he said to me. Do you want to come play with me? Built a house with my wife. We were living in it for 9 months. I came downstairs. I said, do you want to come to Hartford? She said, sure. And we did. He's, by the way, president of the JFK Library now. So he's a brilliant, right around the corner. So went into the utility, did leadership development, and very quickly connected that to organizational development. Team and company performances goes beyond just leaders, right? Leaders are part of it, but there's a whole system there. So got introduced to the fields of leadership and organizational development, and basically spend my time there now. So went from utility to Travelers, property casualty insurance, and then to Cigna, all Hartford based. I was at Cigna for 8 years and fell in love with change management as a discipline. So this idea of driving change, working with people who don't want to receive it, navigating the conflict in that way. And so I led change management at Cigna for 8 years, for 4 years in operations, driving strategic change, and then 4 years in HR, launching leadership development programs focused on leadership change and navigating conflict. In 22, so almost 4 years ago, I went out on my own and stood up my own little consulting firm. And now I just tell people I help leaders and teams perform at their best. I do leadership coaching, I do executive mediation, I do team dynamics, and I do strategy development. And I would say the same thing. I think that even though I'm not always practicing, it's a superpower. It's like a behind the scenes, my ability to have difficult conversations and preserve my relationships and tell people what they need to hear from a caring place. And that all came from here. Right. And I think that that's what even people don't know that's my background, but I think it differentiates me in pretty meaningful ways.
So you all sort of touched on this already. My next question was how you're using aspects of what this program gave you or you took from the program in the work that you do. And, we've heard that you're doing work that is all connected in some way, but in different ways. So apologies for asking you to repeat, maybe not to repeat some of it, but maybe I'll think a little bit more explicitly about, what are the things that you got here that are now traveling with you in different ways?
That's a good question. So for me, it's when we were going through the training and going through the classes and the mediation and role play, the biggest thing that when you're mediating, the people that you're mediating with, they want to be heard, right? That's what they want to be heard. They're not hearing each other, so you're there to make sure that they are. So that's one thing that I took away from this when doing this was like, okay, people want to be heard. People want to be heard. And then the second one is I can't get all riled up, you know? So like when you're mediating and you're a neutral, unbiased party, it can be difficult sometimes. Because, you know, you want to, you know, look at one person and be like, you know, you want to grab them and just shake them and, you know, or slap them or something, you know, snap out of it. But right, yeah, but you have to sit back like, okay. And, you know, in you got to put, so it's one thing we learned too is when you're doing it, put some rules in place, you know, prior to, so you set those expectations and you make sure that everyone follows them, you included, right? So that's, again, when I was going through this, like, okay, set expectations. Okay, make sure people are heard. Speak softly, not too soft though. You want to still get your point across when you're talking to them. But and you just don't ever. Again, another thing that I learned is don't take over the conversation. Right, let them talk, and then facilitate. That's one of the biggest things I took away from this was facilitate. Let them go. If someone gets off, bring them back. Right. So a lot of the skills that we're, I mean, there's a million more. Like I learned how to buy a car. I'm like, I can negotiate a car. I'm going in and doing it. Right. Like I feel good. You're not going to get one over me. So like, there's so many different skills that you can take from this program and use. But from my profession with mediating, those are some of the big ones that I took and that we practice. We do them every day. So yeah. Oh, you're holding it. She's doing it. Don't hit me in the face.
I'll just hold. I know I walk with my hands. So I'm just going to hold on to it tightly. So in more of a practical way. So I'm an administrator. My role is Associate Vice President of Community Residential. So I oversee a bunch of programs for individuals with intellectual disabilities. And so a lot of work that I do is with their families and with the state and advocating for supports for them. They're already funded through the state, but as everybody knows, things are really tight right now because of the political landscape. It's the nicest way I can say it. But the actual skills that I feel like I have or have learned a lot from in the program were those I don't want to call them simple in the sense of they're small, but how to check yourself, check your feelings, self-awareness was a big one for me because I was quick to jump off and quick to get into a fight and quick to stick up for somebody. But a lot of times it's like, what is the best thing? What does everybody need in this moment? So the actual skills in doing that is practicing it, practicing breathing, practicing your cadence with your words, how you say things, where your hands go and how you speak with your hands. So those actual skills are very, very important because when you bring that to a table, when I use a very firm example for state negotiations. I'm in charge of $1 million contracts, which is astounding to me. And one of the biggest things is advocating where that money goes and how that is used when you are trying to have a conversation with somebody from the state that says you literally cannot have those funds or it has to go somewhere else. So you get real savvy with how you have conversations, or why don't we put this meeting off? Well, why don't I go to this and why don't I bring somebody else? You really think about what is happening in the room, the people that are there, and how you can't, I don't want to say manipulate in a mean way, but like manipulate the situation where your skill set can shine. So how I set up a room was very important. How I made sure that there were tools in that room, something as simple as a whiteboard or a big poster paper, those things that people really don't think about. I thought about them all the time because it's what I learned here. It's what I learned in each of my classes. I forget the class that I learned that in, public mediation, public something. What was it? Collaboration. Yeah, it was Lorraine is my professor. Anyway, doesn't matter. But it was very particular in how you set up a room, how you set up yourself, how you set up where people sit. So the real physical things that happen in a room are really, really important. So that's what I learned specifically and what I do now, which gets me what I want at work for the individuals that I support. So, and I also do that with data. And I do that because I learned research methods and how to go through the class. But you need that data and you need to be able to explain that data in a very understanding way so somebody is receptive to that. Right. So while I don't mediate every day, I mediate staff conflict all the time, which is awful. But because nobody wants to listen, and because when you're in a role of power and decision, you really can't be a mediator when that's all I want to do in those situations. But because of my role, I can't. So I do it outside of my program. I do it in other people's programs. But you have to really be aware of yourself in those moments. And that self-awareness came from the physical training and from being in Dorchester Court, being wing class, being in those role plays, even though they made me want to die because I was so uncomfortable. But the more you do it, is everyone comfortable with those all the time? And if you are, I think you were in the right place. But that practice is so important because then it becomes second nature. It just becomes what you do and how you frame things. So that was a very long answer. Thank you. Just go.
I would agree with everything you said in of like working at nonprofits or different organizations where there's like big coalitions or different organizations trying to implement a program, or some of the movement building grassroots organizations. There's always conflict, even though everyone is working towards the same goal of like implementing a program. There's so many egos, different organizations, different styles, and I always found myself in between those situations. And people sometimes also very conflict averse. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to face it. And if you actually have the skill to be able to like, actually, I am feeling really comfortable, picking this up and like facilitating a conversation around that, that's always very helpful. And I think throughout my career in the US, that came up a lot in the refugee resettlement work, advocacy work, or like some of the simple things, coaching refugees trying to find a job in the US and helping them navigate how to negotiate their salaries and jobs when they find something, or helping them negotiate conflict when they face that in the workspace. It can be as simple as that. And I think right now with the job that I'm doing, definitely I'm using a lot of my research and analysis skills, because when we're assessing local government policies around welcoming standard, it's a lot of an analysis of policies where there's a lot of qualitative data, and being able to make sense out of it, and also looking at all the different assessments that we complete to then create a picture of what are the trends, what are some of the things that are coming up, and really also consulting local governments around how to do intergroup dialogues between immigrants and non-immigrants, and build a cohesive community in their local cities and counties. Those are like all the things that comes to mind that I'm using, but I'm pretty sure there are way more things that I've learned that I totally forgot or I can't remember the name of them, but probably it's somewhere there that I'm using for sure. But I think for me, what helped me and put me up to success is actually picking a research project that was really relevant and very focused on the path that I wanted to go. And I've been using things that I've learned or researched and incorporated to my research along the way throughout my career.
I'm loving the variety of how it's very cool using what we learned. I would say the skills I learned in the program are deeply embedded in the fiber of it. Very specifically, I teach negotiation and conflict resolution workshops. I teach about psychological safety and good effective communication. I do executive mediation where a CEO will call me up and say, my COO and my CIO aren't getting along. I need them both, but I'm ready to kill them both. Can you help me? And, getting them to break their dynamic and use the skills we learned, delivering feedback in a way that people can hear it, and not even, knowing people need to be heard, knowing that there's interest behind people's positions, like they just become a part of who you are and what you do. letting somebody go from your team, right? You're drawing on these skills. Difficult conversations with clients, you're drawing on these skills. I will say that I tell people that spouses and teens are the PhD. So that's the next level. The next level course. Good, it gets hard. But yeah, every day, informal and informal ways.
And also, love having heard all of the different skills and all the different ways of doing it. I will say, it brings me so much joy to hear sort of using your research. Oh, yes.
Okay. College, grad school, and high school. I was like,
No, but all of them. I mean, and right. So I always talk about the research methods class, another skills class in the conflict resolution. So thank you for reaffirming that. All right. So a lot of different things that you're doing, a lot of different things that you've taken from this program, a lot of really, really interesting trajectories. And before I sort of open it up for questions and discussions with everyone here, it's the last question I have is, what advice or guidance do you have for current students who are in the next few months or maybe in the next year or so going to be already many of them working and using the skills they're taking from this program, but as they sort of wrap up this program, in taking this program as a launching point for whatever comes next?
I'll lead. I'll keep going. We'll go right down the line. All right. Okay. So what advice could I give for anyone? So first and foremost, one thing that I absolutely loved when I was in the program was I didn't have to do anything alone. Right. So we had such good classmates, I guess. So we became friends. And we always did everything together. Right. So it was really cool to be able to bounce ideas off each other, call each other, meet, talk about, different things. So take advantage of that. I think Joey and I had a bunch of them over our house one night for dinner, right? Dinner and wine. It was actually kind of cool, So take advantage of that. And then don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take a chance. So with the skills that you learn, have confidence in that, right? So don't doubt yourself. Take what you learn in all the classes in this program, and if you want to mediate or whatever you want to do, just do it. That's what I did, and I will, and not just because my wife's here, but I mean this. The business got better when she got involved. Okay, but I mean that because yes, she's a woman and awesome. So her and I, we're the only two employees in the business, so I'm not firing anybody, not letting anyone go. But no, Joey coming on, it grew the business. We became stronger, and we we balance each other out. So that's one thing with that too is, if we balance each other out, we're creative. We don't always agree, right? So, and what we do too is we, after the mediations, one thing I learned in the military is after every event, you have a lessons learned. That's one thing that we'll do. We'll sit and kind of do a lessons learned. We'll talk about different things. Try not to take it home with us. But just for advice for anyone out there, you go through it, you get your degree, you're happy with what you do, you want to continue on. Don't be afraid to do it. And you can call me, you can email me. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to help.
I feel the same way. Like, I don't have business cards to give people because my work, and I was like, my work just didn't do that anymore. So my advice would be, I can only think about when I was in school, I was working all the time. And I feel like sometimes my graduate work didn't become a priority when it should have been. And I feel like I missed out on some things because I was in the throes of work all the time. So one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give is to be very present when you're here and take advantage of the people in the room with you. So I learned a lot from my classmates. I stay in touch with my classmates. I will call them and say, I'm freaking out like I do to David Batts, and, you know, I need help with this or things like that, come to every colloquium that you can, make it a priority, because you never know who you're going to meet, how something is going to change a viewpoint that you have, and it's so impactful. And I didn't do that when I was here, and I really wish I did. I graduated and then came back to go to Ireland on a trip, which was amazing. It was so great. I hopefully will do it again. The program would do it, but I loved school so much and the people that I was with, because I learned so much from them and they helped me build my confidence, but I had to allow that, if that makes sense. That I would go to colloquiums and feel very overwhelmed and say, I'm not even in the ballpark with these people, but I really was. And once I started to feel that I could ask questions and call my professors and have very open conversations. Eben was never my professor, but I would always ask when I was here if I had a question of him and things like that, because they're here to help you and they enjoy doing that. So I would take advantage of that as most as you can, especially with your classmates and the folks that are here. And then the only other thing I would say is, if you want to get into mediation, but also broaden your perspective on what conflict resolution looks like and how applicable it is into anything that you do. I wouldn't say pigeonhole yourself just into conflict resolution field work, because I use it. I bartend, and it is all the time that I use conflict resolution skills. I cannot buy a car, but I wish I could. It's over. I want to cry. But I negotiate with my dad, so he goes with me, and I say, away you go. But to really understand that the work that you're learning and the things that you're doing are applicable if you're a nurse, if you're a teacher. I was teaching, much like you were talking about doing workshops. When I worked in the Somerville Public Schools, admin were asking me to help them have conversations with parents because of the work that I had done in the past. And it was all about the relationship building in those pieces. So while I was formerly the mediator at the school district, I was doing things outside of what I was supposed to do because people knew I had those skills. But I had to say that I had those skills. I had to explain over and over again what conflict resolution was, and things like that. So I would definitely make sure that that's at the forefront of when you're looking for a job, and explaining those skills very particularly: negotiation, facilitation, understanding bias, self-awareness. There were times where I would say, I cannot be neutral in this situation, and you have to step out of it, and that is okay. So knowing yourself in that way and being able to explain that and advocate for yourself in the job market is so important. And I'm like you, I'm very happy to help anybody. You can have my cell phone number. I will do anything to help people, because this is a wonderful program. And I feel like the world that we live in right now needs all of this even more so, because I want to vomit every time I go onto social media or watch television. But I think that the work that we do and the work that you're learning is vital to, I don't want to say humankind because that makes it sound so dramatic, but just to people, as a whole, and to, good people as a whole. So.
Oh, if you don't leave anything else to say, you got it all. I think, well, I was thinking, I think there are like two pieces, like personal life. You can use these skills in your personal life, advocating for yourself, negotiating a, work thing. Like I always advocate for better like pays or benefits within my organization with the leadership, or I feel comfortable leading facilitating some dialogue with the leadership, whatever organization I worked at, because I'm not scared of creating that conflict or like hard conversation. And that's like one thing that I apply and like recommend you to also implement in your life. And I think the other thing is like, because this field is like, you can literally go any direction. So if that's the case, sometimes it's hard to like really nail down just one thing. But I think as best as you can, I would recommend really try to figure out what it is that you want to do, because you can apply this program, the skills that you're learning from this program to that thing that you want to do. But as long as you know your direction, where you want to go, work in corporate, do you want to work in nonprofits, do what issue that you want to work on, environment, immigration, like anything that you pick, you can actually implement. If you want to do a mediation, like totally can go any direction. So I think what makes the most sense is what personally you care about and you want to go for that direction. And I think that I would recommend. And I was just asking Rachel and Nancy before this, I was like, what's the recommendation am I going to give? And Rachel actually told me something really good. So I'm going to give her advice. There's no small or big opportunity. I think any opportunity is good. And like, you know, we don't have to solve the world's biggest problems. Sometimes even small things within your community that you can do also can give that fulfillment. So I think also, yes, like we think big and have big goals, but also sometimes like really grassroots and community work can give that fulfillment or a small opportunity. So just want to share that wisdom too.
Thank you. I was going to go someplace very similar to what you said, which is there are so many ways to apply these skills. There are so many fields you can go into, and I'm of two minds. One, if you know what you want to do and how you want to apply it, go after it, right? If you don't, experiment and say yes. Try new things, see what's out there. I will tell you, for me, when I went from, mediating in a nonprofit to teaching mediation and conflict resolution skills in a nonprofit to HR in a utility, right? I had to like, whoa, what's going on here? Now I'm in this corporate environment. I'm HR in this unionized environment. Like, what's going on? And I found my ability to help people and a passion for leadership because I said yes to experiment with something that I hadn't tried before. So if you know what you want, go after it. If you don't, try lots of different things. Right? See what you like. See what you can apply. The other thing that I would say is network. And I don't mean it from like the business generation sense. I mean it from the relationship building sense. When I launched my business 3.5 years ago, some of my first phone calls were to David Matz. Amy Rebecca Gay gave me my mediation agreement for corporate mediation. She was the former director of the program, associate director, right? Assistant director, right? So that's a relationship that goes back over 20 years. So you meet amazing people in this program, like-minded people committed to the same stuff, and wherever you go, maintain your network because people will show up for you when you least expect it. So that's my advice.
So that is fantastic. I mean, I think when we started talking about this panel, I couldn't have imagined hearing all these amazing things from hearing all these amazing things from all of you. We still have time though, and so in the next 20 minutes or so before until we have to wrap up, it's a chance for anyone who has questions. I see one from Bob currently, but
You want our microphone? I'll be down the way.
Thank you, Benna. My question is for Mark. I noticed that in your bio on the flyer leads with the fact that you're Director of Veteran Services for the town of Andover, but you didn't mention that at all. You talked about divorce mediation. And I'm very curious how you're using the skills you learned here in your job as Director of Veteran Services at Andover. And my motivation for asking you this is that, or part of it is that I'm a research assistant in the William Joyner Institute for the study of war and social consequences. And so the work that we do is very focused on, it is the case now that it's very focused on veterans, question of linking veterans to services, veterans who are not linked to services. Right now we're working with a project with Technical Assent and Massachusetts Gaming Commission on veterans and gambling in Massachusetts, the relationship between service and problem gambling. So it must be the case, I'm guessing, that you're using you're dealing with veterans, then there's conflicts, there's family issues, and how are you using your skills dealing with veterans in Andover?
That's a really good question. And even more so, I'm impressed you read the bio. Thank you. So I appreciate it. Yes, so I am the Veterans Director for the town of Andover, and I'm also the Executive Director for the Woburn Chamber of Commerce. So yep. So I wear many hats. I'm busy. 4 kids, 2 dogs, but the kids are older, 25, 23, 18, 16. So great question. So my job is basically I'm the liaison between the veterans in the town and, well, the veterans in the town and the VA, right? So I spend the majority of my time helping veterans get their service-connected disability. So yes, it's a lot of listening, right? So one of the best tools I learned too is to be an active listener, so that's huge. If you can sit back and listen and you're actually listening and not thinking about what you're going to say next, that goes a long way because now again, they're being heard. They're there looking for help. So they come to me, they're looking for help. Yeah, it's actually very similar. The tools that we have here, I still use. And then what I'm doing is I am helping them get their disability. And a lot of it's very challenging, right? So it's very challenging because when you work with veterans, a lot of veterans don't want to get help right away. So they'll wait 2, 5, 10, 30 years before they, well, I call it the coffee shop talk. They're like, well, my buddy at the coffee shop is at 100% service. What do I get? So we'll go through. The problem is it becomes a little more difficult because it's been so long. So yeah, it's just listening to them, hearing their story. And then part of it too is you kind of almost become a counselor or a therapist at times too, because you're listening to their story. Just even today, I had to read I hear a lot of traumatic events from the veterans in combat. I have to read their story and then figure out which way we're going to go. So yeah, it's just being, basically being compassionate, sympathetic. I'm also able to be empathetic at the same time. So, and trust. So it's just, and the same thing in mediation. I want the people that are coming in to see us, I want them to trust us and feel good with us. Same thing with the veterans. I want them to be able to come in and trust as well, that they know they're working with somebody that's going to take care of them. So yeah, they kind of do all go hand in hand. So that's a great question.
That was a really good question.
So did that answer it? Did that help a little bit? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. All right. I'll open this up to anyone who it feels like applicable to, because there's such a diverse gamut of experiences here in terms of like private practice and working in organizations, public sector, private sector. Is there any sort of like additional challenges and pressure of like actually doing the work like in praxis, especially because like you probably come across a lot of people that don't really want the help, don't want to be engaging with work in good faith. But now it's like you're not just like learning it, you're not practicing. It's like your job, right? So I'm sure there's some pressure there for it to actually like it has to work, or does it? It's like, so I'd be curious to see like how like that kind of, if that pressure comes up, how do you guys navigate that? And have you kind of maybe like kind of grown through that? Like, does that really just, or are you just kind of just like, hey, like that's just the nature of the beast at this point?
That's a good question. That's a good question because I think we all touch on that in a sense, in different light. So for me, it was important when I started the mediation company, and Joey can attest to this. I wanted to be successful. I was like, they're coming in here and we're gonna figure this out, right? I was like, that's how it is. You're not leaving until we figure it out. You're gonna sit there and I'm gonna go against everything we're supposed to do until you no. So because to me it was like, it was like, well, I guess I suck at this then because this didn't work out. And I didn't want that, and you wanted the people to go away and say, wow, what a great experience. I just had the best mediation and yay. It doesn't always, I've learned and accepted that with mediation, it can be, they're not a good fit for me. or I'm not a good fit for them. And you have to just accept that, right? So there's another thing I learned going through the program is that we can terminate mediation just as fast as they can terminate mediation as well. So we have that right to do it. So that was something that I was like, oh, we can do that. So yeah, that's from my standpoint. Yeah, I wanted it to work. I was like, we're going to do it. But I realized and accepted that it's not always going to work. Right. And that's not a direct reflection on me or the skills that I'm trying to put into place. It's just that it's just how it is, nature of the beast.
I would probably, can you hear me? Yeah. Oh my God, I'll sing a song. I would probably say there is a lot of pressure, especially that you put on yourself when you feel like you should be able to help people figure something out or to come to an agreement. And that pressure is a lot depending on the work that you're doing. So for me particularly, I don't formally mediate anymore. But I deal with a lot of conflict, like I said, in my job. And a lot of it, the more high stakes ones, I find myself, the more high stake conversations I have, I find myself very pressured to make sure that somebody understands what I'm trying to get to. But I try really hard to make sure that they feel that they're understood. And a lot of times the hardest conversations are with parents and loved ones of folks that receive services. Like I always say to my staff and to everybody, basically, this is that person's person, right? So how they feel, what they need is so important, but they need to know that you understand that. So how do you have that conversation? How do you make somebody feel that you're understanding when you're not in their shoes at all? You don't have a loved one with disabilities. You don't have a loved one relying on state services. So a lot of what that's very pressurized for me. And I am so nosy that I'm a very good active listener because I want to know everything and I want to know how it got there and I want to know why. And that's my nosiness is really helpful in that way. But then when trying to make sure that I understand that and can have that conversation back to somebody, that pressure that I feel is really, really hard. So like you said, like how do you do it when you're in it? And a lot of what I do is reach out to other people and say, did I understand that this way? Did I hear that right? And sometimes it's no. And sometimes I ask the people that I'm talking with, did I understand that right? Or did I frame it the right way? Because I want to know. And even just asking that, you kind of put yourself in a space of, do people not think I don't know what I'm doing? But even just doing that in that check-in gives people that understanding of, well, she's trying at least. And that in of itself is very, very important. So I fail at it very frequently in those hard conversations, but making people feel heard and understood is probably the hardest part. And checking in with people to make sure you're doing it the right way is the only way around that, I would say. It's kind of like you throw the modesty out the door and your own ego, and you just check in with people. So I don't know if that exactly answered that, but that's how I do it in my everyday work. I'm just sweating.
I'm going to go back to my comment about experimentation. Because trying different things and seeing what you like and seeing what you don't like, seeing what you're good at, seeing what you're a good fit for. When I left Cigna, I really didn't know if I would like being an independent consultant, an army of one. I had a team of 17 people. I had resources. I could have somebody create a PowerPoint deck for me. I could have somebody make printouts. I'm developing people, growing their careers. I really didn't know if I would like it. But I was willing to experiment and try it and see if it would work, right? So I went from small 2-3 person community grassroots organization to 6-person, still small consulting firm, but a little different feel. Then in-house consulting, like just tried different things on. Now I would say I read a book called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth, and it's about the notion that there's a difference between working in your business and working on your business, right? So if you love mediating, but you don't want to do business development and you don't want to manage your books and you don't want to, then you want to go work for a mediation firm who's going to do that for you. If you do enjoy those elements, then right? So there's just so many different ways to get in. And I would say that when I launched my consulting firm, the number one thing that I did that I think set me up for success was I talked to as many people as I possibly could who ran businesses that I admired, right? As many of them as I could. And I asked them every single question I possibly could. How do you describe what you do at a party? What kind of computer do you have? What kind of insurance do you carry? Do you have an attorney? Right? Like everything I could. And I got, at the same time, a sense of guardrails and a sense of freedom, that everybody was doing it their own way. Everybody was making it work. Everybody was piecing it together however they knew how. So yeah, for me, there are elements in private practice of running my business that are nowhere near conflict resolution training, right? But I've got to bring that in. And so I'm what's the phrase? Chief cook and bottle washer, right? I'm all three. And if you're going to do private practice, you got to enjoy it and you got to go in eyes wide open. So trying different things and figure out what you like, figuring out what you're good at, figuring out how you want to spend your time. People do. That's been a big part of my journey.
Sorry, I didn't identify just so. Hi, guys. I'm not sure I need this, but yeah. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say that it felt earlier on in the evening a little bit like being at church. I don't go to church, but like if I did, it's the way that I think, like I'm just like to hear to be in a room full of so many humans who are doing this work and understand the value of doing this work is just really a pleasure. So thank you for that. This is maybe a continuation of the question that was just asked. I think that one of the things that has changed for me in my thinking since beginning this program is a sense of time, like how valuable taking the time to really listen to understand is. And I think I heard it from all of you tonight. But I noticed that in the rest of my life, that feels very different. Like that it feels like I am the only one that doesn't constantly feel this time pressure to get to the answer, to get to the solution, to get to the resolution immediately. And I guess, Stephen, you were just sort of talking about it, but if you could say a little bit more about what that shift has been like for you, if you notice that also, what helps you to tolerate sort of the dichotomy between the speed that it sometimes feels that everything else is working with, and also at the same time understanding the value of really taking the time necessary to do the steps to get where you're going.
Yeah, doing the steps is doing the work, right? And what I always say is if you do things well on the front end and set things up well on the front end, it takes more time and it feels like it goes, like it's not moving, but then everyone's aligned and you can move more quickly. When you don't do that, you feel like you're making really fast progress and then you have to clean up a big mess, right? So part of my job very explicitly right now is helping people slow down. Slow down. Part of this work is listening to each other. Part of this work is understanding. Part of this work is bringing diverse perspectives, whether it's nonprofit, immigration issues and whatnot, or corporate negotiation, right? So a lot of my work is helping people realize that slowing down and having these conversations in earnest actually helps you speed up later on. And I think we're a breath of fresh air. I think that people really, they do need to be heard. That we operate differently than most people, right? Most people don't see this nuance behind conflict and disagreement and competing interests the way we do, right? And it becomes a part of who you are. And for me, at least, I don't want to operate the other way, and our society has gotten to a place where we let speed and efficiency overpower effectiveness, right? And I used to say to my team, like, I would give 3 people the same assignment and not tell them that I gave them the same assignment. And they would go off and they would come back and they would bring me their ideas. And either they were all aligned and that was the greatest idea in the world, or I had 3 totally different ideas that we could work from and choose from. And they would get mad at me because I gave the same assignment to 3 different people and that's not efficient. And I'm not here to be efficient. I'm here to come up with the best solution. And now I get 3 brilliant minds tackling a problem. I'm valuing other parts, right? And so whether I have that conversation explicitly or it's just how I'm being, I don't think you can do good work and cut those conversations short. And I'm convinced of that. It's how I work. And the nice thing about being on my own versus being in-house is that when I was in-house, I felt like I was clawing my way to the table. Please, 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 please. And on my own, I have the good fortune of having clients, but they're paying me. They want me there. They're asking me to be there. They're seeking my counsel and advice. They want my help. And so it feels very, very different because they are appreciating the difference in style that I'm bringing forward and asking for it.
Yeah, I'll say like working at nonprofits, there's always like false sense of urgency. Like it has to happen right now, tomorrow, or like whatever. But like no one agrees on what needs to happen. Everyone like puts on ideas and they're like, yeah, we can do this. But like no one takes a step back. Okay, like what's our goal? What's our like what are we trying to achieve here? And like what everyone can bring into this. It's like also like I guess in some points like project management of like these little tasks and projects and goals. Yeah, and being able to say like, hey, like no one's gonna die if we just wait for another hour or like another day to just really align on this and move forward. And here's how we can guide that conversation. I think that comes up a lot in the work that I do and really helps to be able to be the person who says that. But sometimes also you have to really go with the flow and like figure things out on that rush and urgency and not I will say realistically, not every time it's perfect, but you also then build skills to how you navigate that along the side, like small lobbyings among people and just trying to align people without needing to just have another day of figuring it out or have a longer conversation because that's not possible. So I think that, yeah, that comes up a lot. I think just really trying to stand your ground on like what you know will be helpful in like navigating between people to be able to facilitate that conversation.
So from our practice, we have a lot of people that come in and one is sprinting to the finish line and one is walking, right? Yeah, they're on 2 totally different pages. So it took a lot for me to say, you know, because at first I'm like, well, this person, they want to get it done. The one question they always ask is, how long is this going to take? You know, so again, we're focused more on divorce. So when you go and doing a divorce mediation, how long is this going to take? How long is it going to take? You know, so it took a little bit for me to learn to step back. And like, you know, Steve said, you want to be efficient, right? You don't want to miss anything. If you're rushing through it to get it done, you know, it gets sent up to the courts and it's going to get kicked back, and that's more time. So it took a lot to step back and say, okay, you're running, you're walking, we're going to find a common ground, but, you know, and we're going to work with you. We're not going to push anybody. We're going to work with you. However, you need to slow down and you might need to pick it up just a little bit, you know, but yeah, so it's a challenge for sure from that aspect.
To answer your question, well, the way that I was thinking about it was it's almost a curse in a way for you to always know that slowing down, being really calculated and understanding of what's going on, because sometimes you don't have the grace in the outside world for that, right? Everybody needs everything immediately right away. And a lot of things that I would say to people is like, but did you die? No. Like, honestly, I seriously, I mean that. And how long have you been in this conflict, right? So you spent time on it, so we can spend more time on figuring this out elsewhere. And I also do that in my personal life because I get very frustrated that somebody else is just not understanding what this other person is saying. And I'm like, listen, like this is what we need to do. But it's just not it's not how we're taught. It's not how we learn things in school, right? And then now with social media and the way that kids are and the way that families are, everything is immediate all the time because it has to be, right? So it's almost a curse that it's ingrained in us that slowing down, listening, and understanding is what you have to do in order to get to where you need to go. So there was that line in the wedding planner that's like, those who can't do, teach, right? So that's how I feel. It's like, that's probably why I'm still single. That's probably why, like, I'm not even joking, like, because I will have that conversation. I've had conversations with exes and things like that where I'm like, well, let's figure this out. Let's sit down and let's really break this down. And no one wants to do that. It's very uncomfortable. So I find it in my work life, but also in my personal life, also with family things. My dad says that the reason him and my mom are still together is because I've been able to do that. It's the reason my brother is still in our lives after having a very, very serious drug addiction and mental health issue. Because he wouldn't be in our lives had I not been able to, and I'm tooting my own horn, had I not been able to navigate those instances with my family. And the only reason I knew how to do that was because of this type of training. So that slowing down feels like a curse so many times, but it is so helpful in every moment. And I don't know how to think any way else now, right? I still pop off at things that I shouldn't. But someone will be very quick to say like, oh, like, did you die? And I always tell people, stay curious. Like, I think it's a Ted Lasso thing. I think that's who said it when he's doing the dots. But I tell everybody that, stay curious. And why do you have to stay curious? Is because you will always miss something if you're not. So I find the time thing very, very hard in my personal life. Yeah.
So speaking of we try to end a little bit before 7 because students who have research methods tonight, we have to be in class in 7. But also I think that's a really good place to end. I think that's a really just fabulous summation of, I'll speak just for myself, but I imagine that if I asked my colleagues, they would say of the things we do and why we do them professionally, personally, and everything else. So I want to just thank you all again for agreeing to come, for working with Kelly to coordinate the time, to Kelly for working with you to coordinate the day and the time, and for being here with us tonight. It's so appreciated. I will say also, it's just always wonderful to see